The sharp glare of the California sun was almost blinding as it reflected off the sleek windshields of the luxury cars parked outside one of Los Angeles's most exclusive dealerships. Inside, the temperature was cool, but the air crackled with a hum of money, power, and prestige. It was a place where high-rolling executives, celebrities, and tech moguls waltzed in without a second glance, trading stacks of cash for polished status symbols. But today, that unyielding air of superiority was about to be shattered. Renee Marshall stepped into the showroom, her stride confident and unyielding. Her ebony skin gleamed under the showroom lights, and her thick curly hair framed a face set with determination. Dressed in an elegant white blouse and tailored black trousers, she was the epitome of grace and professionalism. Renee was not just another customer, she was the kind of woman who commanded attention, though not always the kind she deserved. As she crossed the threshold, eyes flitted toward her, appraising, judging. A thin, razor-sharp smile tugged at the corner of the receptionist's red-painted lips. Her blue eyes swept over Renee dismissively before turning back to her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard as if Renee had been rendered invisible. Renee's gaze scanned the room, noting the gleaming black Ferrari, the latest model Tesla Roadster, and an array of Mercedes-Benz vehicles lined up like soldiers ready for battle. The showroom was designed to showcase power, a declaration of exclusivity that few could afford. "Can I help you?" The voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Jason, one of the senior sales associates, approached, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his hair slicked back with a shine that rivaled the car's. His expression was thinly veiled disdain wrapped in a polite mask. "Yes, I'm interested in the new Mercedes-AMG GT, Renee replied, her voice even and unwavering. Jason's smile widened, but it wasn't friendly, it was predatory. He glanced behind him to ensure his colleagues were within earshot. They were. A cluster of sales associates leaned against a polished countertop, their murmured conversations interrupted by sideways glances. "That's quite a car," Jason said, the words thick with condescension. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more practical?" A chuckle bubbled up from the group behind him, and one of them whispered, "Does she even know how much that thing costs?" Renee felt the familiar prickle of anger heat her skin, but she kept her composure. This wasn't her first encounter with snobbery masked as professionalism. She took a breath, a slow inhale that reminded her of who she was and what she'd overcome to get here. She thought back to her years at Stanford, where she graduated with honors in business administration, and her climb through the corporate ladder to become one of the most formidable strategic consultants in Los Angeles. She wasn't here to prove herself. She was here to buy a car. "Yes," she said, her tone firm. "I'd like to test drive it, if possible." Jason's smile faltered for a split second before he recovered. "I'm afraid that's not possible without proper verification," he said, the pause before the last word drawing out like a taut wire. The room fell silent. Renee could feel the weight of their stares. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, but today it stung deeper. Maybe it was the memory of her late father's voice reminding her that she'd always have to fight a little harder, be a little stronger. Renee's eyes met Jason's, unblinking. "Verification," she echoed, her voice cutting through the oppressive silence. Jason glanced at the cluster of colleagues, who were now openly smirking. "You know how it is. We can't just let anyone take out a car of this caliber." The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Renee's silence was not one of defeat, but of calculation. She took a moment to collect herself, each second stretching out an uncomfortable tension that made Jason shift on his polished shoes. She glanced at the business cards in her wallet, each representing connections she'd meticulously built over the years, CEOs, city council members, and powerful friends in the press. But today, she didn't need to play that card just yet. "All right, I understand," she said, a slight smile touching her lips. Jason's shoulders relaxed, mistaking her composure for resignation. "Good," he said, motioning her toward the exit. "We do have other vehicles that might be—" "I'm not leaving," Renee interrupted. Her voice, calm and resolute, caused a couple of onlookers to straighten up, curious. Jason's smirk faltered again, irritation flickering in his eyes. "Excuse me," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "I said I'm not leaving," Renee repeated, louder this time. "I'll be test driving that car today." And I'll do so with someone who understands how to treat potential clients. The murmur of conversations around them ceased altogether. Renee could feel the heat of a dozen eyes on her, but she kept hers locked onto Jason's, daring him to challenge her further. "Ma'am," Jason said, the politeness in his tone now brittle with suppressed rage. "I don't think you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she said, taking a step closer, her voice unwavering. "What I don't understand is how a dealership in a city as diverse as Los Angeles allows its employees to make assumptions based on appearances." A man in a tailored gray suit stepped forward from behind the glass office at the far end of the room. His salt and pepper hair and polished demeanor marked him as someone with authority. The nameplate on his desk read Stephen Marcus, General Manager. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his voice smooth but edged with curiosity. Before Jason could respond, Renee spoke. "The problem, Mr. Marcus, is that I came here to purchase a car, a luxury car, and your employees have made it abundantly clear that they don't think I belong here." Stephen's eyes darted from Jason to Renee, the weight of the moment sinking in. The tension in the room was palpable, and it was clear that any response would be scrutinized by everyone within earshot. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding," Stephen said, his voice carefully measured. "We strive for excellence in customer service, and I'm certain there has been a mistake." "No mistake," Renee said. "This is the reality for many people who walk into places like this expecting to be treated fairly. And you know what? I'm tired of it." The room was so silent that the sound of a car's engine starting outside felt like a roar. Jason's face had lost all its smugness, replaced with a sheen of sweat as the implication of her words settled over him. Stephen cleared his throat. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to personally assist you with the purchase." Renee's eyes narrowed, evaluating the sincerity in his expression. She nodded once, signaling that she would hear him out. The other employees shifted awkwardly, the smirks wiped clean from their faces as Stephen led Renee toward his office. The glass walls of the office provided a panoramic view of the showroom, where every employee watched the scene unfold like a high-stakes play. As Stephen closed the door behind them, Renee spoke before he could start. "I'm not interested in empty apologies, Mr. Marcus," she said. "I want to ensure that this never happens to another customer again." Stephen's eyes softened, and for a moment, the practiced corporate veneer slipped. "I understand, and I assure you, this will be addressed. I would like to personally arrange for your test drive and offer a gesture of good faith." Renee nodded, the fire in her chest cooling as the tide began to turn. "Good. Let's make that happen." Within minutes, a junior associate, one who had not participated in the mockery, brought the keys to the gleaming black Mercedes-AMG GT. The young man, barely in his 20s, offered a professional smile, his hand steady as he handed over the keys. "Thank you," Renee said, stepping out of the office and into the sunshine. The sleek car waited for her like a coiled panther, all muscle and beauty. She ran her fingers along the polished surface, feeling the power beneath her touch. Jason and the others watched from the showroom, their faces a mixture of shock and forced neutrality. With a turn of the key, the engine purred to life, sending a ripple of awe through the onlookers. The test drive was flawless, with Renee handling the car like she'd been driving it for years. The roar of the engine was her victory cry. When she returned, parking the car as effortlessly as she had driven it, the showroom was still. Stephen met her at the entrance, an unreadable expression on his face. "Well," he asked. Renee stepped out, holding his gaze. "I'll take it." A flicker of relief passed over Stephen's features. "I'll have the paperwork ready immediately." As the transaction unfolded, word spread. The incident was recounted across Los Angeles, not just as a tale of discrimination, but as a story of resilience. Renee's stand against casual racism inspired others, and her story reached the pages of local newspapers and social media, sparking discussions that ripple far beyond the walls of that luxury dealership. The employees who mocked her faced repercussions, with Jason receiving disciplinary action that echoed across his career. The dealership itself adopted new policies, training sessions emphasizing the importance of equity and respect for every customer, no matter how they appeared. Renee, now the owner of a car she had rightfully earned, didn't just drive off into the sunset. She set a precedent. Her actions were a reminder that strength is not always shown in grand gestures, but in the refusal to be diminished by those who underestimate you. And as she drove through the streets of Los Angeles, the sun glinting off the car's polished surface, she knew that the road ahead was open, and she was ready for whatever came next. Days after her triumphant purchase, Renee sat in her sun-dappled office, surrounded by sleek modern furniture that matched the sophistication of her personality. The hum of traffic below barely reached her penthouse as she scrolled through her inbox. The story of her experience at the luxury car dealership had gone viral, spreading across major platforms and sparking debates nationwide. Just as she finished reading an article titled, "When Discrimination Backfires," the story of Renee Marshall, her phone buzzed. The name on the screen made her eyebrows arch in surprise. Stephen Marcus. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "This is Renee." "Ms. Marshall." Stephen's voice was tense, but not unkind. "I wanted to speak with you personally. Can we meet for lunch? There's something you need to know." Curiosity prickled at her nerves. She agreed, and they arranged to meet at the Ivy, one of LA's most upscale restaurants, where business deals were often brokered over truffle pasta and imported wine. When Renee arrived, dressed in a crimson wrap dress that spoke of confidence and power, Stephen was already waiting. He stood as she approached, a hint of unease in his expression. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit. They exchanged pleasantries until their orders were taken, and then Stephen leaned forward, eyes serious. "What I'm about to tell you is unconventional but necessary," he said. "You see, the fallout from your visit has been more significant than you know." Renee's expression remained stoic, but her heart quickened. She had moved past her anger, but she was still fiercely protective of her dignity. "I'm not here to dredge up old offenses," she said. "I hope this is worth my time." Stephen exhaled, a smile breaking through his tension. "Oh, it will be." He reached into his briefcase and placed a file on the table, pushing it toward her. Renee's brows furrowed as she opened it, revealing pages of documents. Names, transactions, and most curiously, a list of dealership salespeople including Jason's name, marked with red ink. "This is a record of illegal kickbacks and discriminatory practices within luxury dealerships throughout the city," Stephen explained. "For years, some of these associates have intentionally turned away minority customers unless they believed they could be exploited. Jason was deeply involved, and your visit exposed it." Renee's eyes widened as she absorbed the information. "You knew." "I suspected, but you gave me the proof I needed." "Your story caught the attention of a local investigative journalist who contacted me anonymously after the incident. They hinted at what I'd feared. Discrimination was being leveraged for personal gain." The weight of Stephen's revelation sank in. It wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a systemic issue. "So what now?" Renee asked, a fiery determination in her gaze. Stephen smiled, a genuine expression of hope. "Thanks to your courage and the media storm that followed, the investigation is being escalated. Jason and several others will face serious charges. But there's more. We're establishing a partnership with community leaders to promote equality and accountability in the industry. And if you're willing, I'd like you to be part of it." Renee's pulse raced. She'd come for justice, and now she was being offered a seat at the table where change could be made. She leaned back in her chair, a smile of satisfaction spreading across her face. "I'm in," she said. As they talked through the details, the sun began to set, casting the restaurant in a warm golden glow. Renee knew that while she had walked into that dealership alone, today she wasn't just a woman who bought a car. She was a voice that sparked change. The news broke the next day. Headlines read, "Luxury car scandal uncovered. How one woman's determination exposed a citywide discrimination ring." Renee's phone was inundated with messages of support, offers to collaborate, and most surprisingly, an invitation to speak at a national conference on business ethics. The story ended not with a car, but with a movement. Renee drove through the streets of LA, her new Mercedes-AMG GT gleaming under the lights. But this time, the power she felt behind the wheel was not just from the engine. It was from the knowledge that she had not only changed her narrative, but paved a road for countless others to follow. And as she sped through the city, the wind in her hair and freedom in her heart, Renee knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning.